up now! Run, you stupid bastard! It's going to explode!
Munich, 1958. 23 dead, including some of the most talented sportsmen on Earth.
We were really big time.
Ready for takeoff.
You could really not expect to have a better crew flying that Manchester United team.
105, V1.
The crew had not had the wings de-iced.
The pilots know what they're doing, boys. Christ, we're not going to make it.
I thought it was dead.
Blame for the tragedy would fall on one man.
That is one hell of a burden to take on.
And he was devastated by this.
The effort to clear his name would span more than a decade and pit one nation against another in a bitter struggle for the truth behind one of the worst tragedies in the history of sport.
Mayday, Mayday.
February the 6th, 1958. Munich Airport, West Germany. A British pilot prepares to bring home an extraordinary group of passengers. The Manchester United football team. In the 1950s, they are the most famous sportsmen on the planet.
Everyone in the huge Wembley crowd, from the Queen to the oldest fan, is tense with excitement.
Manchester United is probably the most premier team, most famous team this country had ever seen before.
I joined the club in December of '57.
Harry Gregg is the team's star goalkeeper.
We boarded the aircraft, which was a charter flight. We were really big time.
After playing a key game in Yugoslavia, the team has advanced to the semi-final of the prestigious European Cup.
The aircraft had to stop in Munich because it didn't have sufficient range to get back to Manchester from Belgrade without stopping to refuel.
The 21 players and staff are traveling in style. They're aboard a British European Airways Airspeed Ambassador. It's a luxurious twin-engine aircraft, also known as the Elizabethan. The captain is 36-year-old James Thain. He's a former RAF pilot with an impeccable service record.
He was quite a remarkable man. He was very upright and honourable, very strong character.
The weather had been pretty grim throughout the day. Snowfall in the morning gave way to a rising of temperature to just above freezing.
As Captain Thain finishes his pre-flight inspection, the young sportsmen settle in for the journey home.
They were notable for the fact that their manager, Matt Busby,
I'd like the lads to get a good night's sleep.
was picking relatively young players in the team, and that's why they were known as the Busby Babes.
Busby's Babes start the second half in cracking form with that slippery winger, David.
We're a young and wonderful team, which I'm very proud to have been part of.
I'll give you guys a chance to get your money back once we're in the air, boys, all right?
Travelling with the team are 11 of the UK's best-known sports journalists, eager to report on Manchester United's latest success. Also on board are a few Yugoslavians catching a ride to the UK. 38 passengers in all.
How's she looking out there?
Oh, snow build-up's minimal. No need to sweep. Take us home.
Happily.
38-year-old co-pilot Kenneth Raymond is a World War II ace. He is also an Elizabethan captain and is in fact senior to Thain at the airline.
They were both highly experienced pilots. You could really not expect to have a better crew flying that Manchester United team.
They were great friends, and of course they were captains together, and they flew together quite often.
Raymond and Thain have agreed that on this flight, they will switch seats.
Because Captain Raymond was going to be handling the aircraft and he would be used to handling the aircraft from the left-hand seat, that's why he sat in the left-hand seat.
Port and starboard fuel cocks on, crossfeed off.
It's against company policy, which states the commander should always sit in the left seat. But it's a rule that is frequently broken.
1 inch open.
Throttles, port and starboard, levers, 1 inch open.
Carb air, port and starboard ram.
Carb air, port and starboard ram.
Ignition boost switches off.
Ignition boost switches off.
Munich, 609, Zulu uniform. I am ready to take off.
Beeline 609, your clearance expires at 3-1. Time now is 3-0. Cleared for takeoff. Right turn out.
Thank you. Rolling.
In light snow, with the temperature hovering around freezing, Thain and Raymond start their takeoff run.
Full power.
Full power.
I'd been reading a book that one of the lads had passed to me. I was reading that, and we sat off down the runway, and I looked out the window. No big deal at all.
Temperatures and pressures okay. 90. 100.
Takeoff speed is 119 knots.
Abandon takeoff.
But suddenly I watched the wheels lock and unlock, and the plane started to spin. We stopped slightly side on.
Sorry about that. Engine fluctuating.
609, we are abandoning the takeoff.
Tower, please say again.
We are abandoning the takeoff. May we backtrack? Over.
Engine boosting.
I would think so, yes.
The problem was with boost surging, it happened with that particular engine on that particular aircraft. It was Bristol Centaurus engine. It was prone to doing this, especially at airports which are at high altitudes. And one of the problems was that the thrust sometimes was opened too fast.
609, clear to backtrack.
The Elizabethan taxis back to the start of the runway for a second takeoff attempt.
I truthfully can say I was not too perturbed at all. Another adventure for a young man, and I was not a bad flyer at that time.
Munich, 609, Zulu uniform. When we get to the end of the runway, I should like to take off again. Is the clearance still valid?
609, your clearance is still valid.
Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize, but we are heading back to try again.
Back to the beginning. Sat, revved up as one would do, revved, and then they took the anchors off, and I paid more attention this time.
Slightly further along the runway, the same thing happened again.
Port is off the clock.
This time it was Thain who actually abandoned that takeoff.
And again, when I thought we were about to lift, I watched the wheels lock and unlock, lock and unlock. You gotta stop.
The Munich 609 Zulu uniform. We are abandoning this takeoff as well.
Roger. Clear to backtrack.
And the pilot came on and said,
Sorry for that. We have a technical fault that we're now looking into. We're returning to the terminal for further checks. Nothing to be alarmed about, and we hope to have you airborne shortly.
Don't stray too far, boys.
we'd return to the terminal and everybody would disembark.
Bill Black, the station engineer, had seen these two aborted takeoffs and obviously clattered up the steps, put his head through the cockpit and said, well, what's going on? Why haven't you taken off?
We've been getting a boost surge in the port engine. Up past 60 last time.
They received an explanation that this was a fairly common phenomenon when operating the Elizabethan from Munich because of the high altitude, that it was nothing to worry about, and they were given advice when advancing the throttles, if they got the surging, was to just retard the surging engine slightly, reduce power, and then take it up again to full power more slowly.
Passengers for BEA 609, please proceed to the tarmac.
Within 5 minutes of the passengers being offloaded, they were loaded on again. And then it was a surprise to them. They've had 2 aborted takeoffs, and now they're asked to go back again.
If one person had said, this is crazy, we're not going, he would have had a whole lot of followers. But there you are, human nature again. Who's got the moral courage? But who likes to admit to being a coward?
BEA Flight 609 prepares for its 3rd takeoff attempt from Munich Airport. The plane carrying the Manchester United Football Club is drawing attention from inside the terminal.
You've got to remember, these are the Busby babes. They're laughing and joking all the time, that sort of thing. But now they're quite quiet, and there's a lot of tension there in the air.
Little Johnny Berry, he said, we're all going to get frickin' killed here. And Liam Whelan said, well, if it happens, I'm ready. At that point, I opened my tie.
Ignition boost switches off.
Ignition boost switches off.
Wings still look good. No need to de-ice. Munich Tower, B-line 609 Zulu uniform. I'm ready to taxi. Over.
B-line 609, your clearance void, if not airborne, by 04, time now 02.
Roger, understand. Valid till 04.
Captain Thain has just 2 minutes before the window for takeoff closes. If this 3rd attempt is not successful, the flight may be cancelled and his famous passengers will be grounded in Munich.
Munich 609 Zulu uniform is ready for takeoff.
Roger.
The runway is more than 1,900 meters long, even with their plan for a gradual acceleration. The Elizabethan should be able to lift off just past 1,200 meters.
So for the 3rd time that day, they actually lined up the aircraft with the centre line, got the permission, clearance to take off, and they're away.
Full power.
Full power. Temperatures and pressures okay. Port surging slightly.
He experienced a bit of this engine surging, which he retarded the throttle slightly and then advanced it again.
Full power again.
Both engines sound an even note, and we're going down the runway now for a takeoff. Everything seems okay.
The pilots know what they're doing, boys.
I thought, there's more people in this plane more frightened than what I am.
.105. V1.
Velocity 1 is the speed at which a takeoff cannot safely be abandoned. The point of no return.
Raymond now is waiting, is anticipating now Thain to call out 119 knots, which is V2.
At 119 knots, the plane can become airborne. But something goes wrong. They suddenly lose speed.
Christ, we're not going to make it!
There was no screaming, there was no shouting, there was nothing like that at all. Darkness and daylight and sparks and thumps, smacks. You just can't describe it. And then it was just complete and total darkness. I thought it was dead.
The Elizabethan has crashed through a fence, hitting a house and a fuel shed 300 meters beyond the end of the runway.
And eventually I got to my senses and I started to crawl uphill. And I got to a hole of what was left of the aircraft. And I honestly thought, I'm the only one alive here. And then I heard a shout.
Out! Everyone out! Now! It's going to explode! Out! Everyone
He shouted, run, you stupid bastard, it's going to explode.
now! The plane could explode! Come on! Go, 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 go! Run, you stupid bastard! It's going
And
to
I
explode!
heard a child crying. I shouted, come back.
Come back, you bastards! There's people alive in there!
I went back in through the hole I came out of, and I found the little child. Went round the other side and found Matt Busby, the boss.
Busby's alive, but in shock.
He had a small cut behind his right ear, I remember it, but when I looked down, his foot was completely reversed round the other way.
Oh, my leg.
I jammed some rubbish up behind him because he didn't look too bad and left him propped up.
Harry Gregg pulls out one passenger after another, both living and dead.
A man must do what a man must do.
Within minutes of the crash, help begins to arrive from the airport and nearby farms.
The co-pilot is trapped up there! Can you help him? Yes.
Two German rescuers climb up on the wing and free Kenneth Raymond from the wreckage. He is badly injured. 21 people are dead. 7 are Manchester United players. The head coach, secretary, and trainer are also dead. 7 more team members are seriously injured. Manager Matt Busby is in critical condition. Manchester United, one of the world's greatest football teams, is effectively wiped out.
What started out as a wonderful thing sadly went wrong.
Near Munich, a fierce blaze marks the wreck of a British airliner.
We had this pretty high-profile air disaster here. The stakes are quite high. Not long after the end of the Second World War, we've got 2 pilots who fly in the aircraft who actually flew in the RAF during the war. Yeah, and Munich, obviously, as well, was that place where the cradle of the Nazi Party. So you've got a British government, you've got a German government. Everybody was going to tread warily.
At 10 p.m. on February the 6th, 6 hours after the crash, the man assigned to investigate it arrives on the scene.
Hans Reichel was the West German chief accident investigator. He was quite experienced. He was 57 years of age. He'd flown with the Luftwaffe. He'd flown with Lufthansa, the national airline, so there's no doubt he was actually a qualified pilot.
This was the first major international accident that he had had to deal with.
In his role as air crash investigator, Steve Moss is re-examining the evidence from a 21st century perspective.
He certainly seems to have arrived at Munich rather under-equipped,
Kann ich bitte ein bisschen Licht haben?
to the extent that he had to borrow a news crew's lighting equipment to commence his examination.
Can I have some light here, please?
Of course, uppermost in his mind was the possibility of ice on the wings. So he went looking for that, and sure enough, he found it.
The wrecked aircraft was covered by a layer of snow about 8 centimeters thick. This could be brushed aside with the hand without difficulty. Under this, there was a layer of ice, frozen firmly onto the surface of the wing. Here.
Reichel finds the only surfaces free of ice are near the engines. He assumes the entire wing was coated in ice before the crash, and that during the takeoff attempt, the propellers blew away the ice behind them. The day after the crash, investigators take a closer look at the scene. They examine the tire tracks, which extend 50 meters and right off the end of the runway.
The information from the ground marks that the aircraft never got airborne must have, in Reichel's mind, reinforced this impression that ice on the wings was responsible.
Manchester, from the moment the news came through, was a city in mourning. While millions wait anxiously for news of the seriously injured men, the hospital staff worked day and night to save them. Matt Busby was their worst problem. For 2 days, he lay between life and death with one of his lungs completely deflated. Then came the welcome news: Matt was off the danger list.
6 of the 7 injured players also pull through. But the team loses one of its greatest stars.
Duncan had died. Duncan died, I think, 10 days. Yeah.
To this day, many regard Duncan Edwards as the greatest footballer the UK has ever produced. Co-pilot Kenneth Raymond also dies, having suffered a brain injury.
Full power.
Full power.
James Thain is left to face a wall of questions on his own.
Well, you see, on the first takeoff, we weren't completely satisfied with the engines.
Any little bit of information that the press could get, there was another headline. It was relentless. So it must have been very difficult for him.
2 days after the crash, Reichel interviews Thain.
After the accident, we established that the starboard wing had a layer of rough ice on it. The region of the propeller slipstream was free from ice.
When I walked out of the aircraft on the first attempt, I could see the snow thawing on the wings and count the ribs of the aircraft.
What did you say was the cause of the accident?
My personal feeling is that there must have been a large quantity of snow built up at the end of the runway.
Why were you sitting in the right-hand seat?
People began to speculate, even before the inquiry, about the cause of the accident.
2 months after the crash, in April 1958, a German inquiry formally gets underway.
Shall I begin?
The German investigation, straight away, it seemed to be into this adversarial role of somebody being on trial and having to prove his innocence.
They knew straight away that there's something going on here. He's on the rope straight away, right?
Hans Reichel draws on witness testimony of snow on the wings and Thain's own account that he did not de-ice.
And this is something that will not go away with Reichel. It's ice, ice, ice all the way.
The temperature the afternoon of the crash hovered around 0 degrees Celsius. It wasn't cold enough for the snow to create ice.
Thain saw the water actually dripping off the leading edge. So he knew the snow was actually melting, so obviously that convinced him again that it just didn't require de-icing.
But German experts note that the Elizabethan had just descended from 25,000 feet, where the air temperature was minus 25 degrees Celsius. They conclude that snow falling on the frozen wings would have turned instantly to ice. Thain counters with the testimony
De-icing on.
that he turned on the wing de-icing heaters on descent to Munich. That would have made the wings warmer, not colder than the air. Thain seems to have all the answers. But what he doesn't know is that Hans Reichel is about to present a controversial piece of evidence that will change everything. The German government inquiry of the Munich disaster takes a decisive turn with the introduction of a casual snapshot.
This was potentially a smoking gun because at first glance, looking at the photograph, it appeared to show a white area on the top of the wings, which certainly was interpreted as being a layer of snow or ice.
Every other aircraft that left Munich that day was de-iced, but not the Elizabethan. For investigator Hans Reichel, the crew's failure to de-ice is the leading cause of the accident.
Apart from this icing, I could find nothing which might have been a cause for the accident or to have contributed to it.
As for the house at the end of the runway,
clearly it was an issue because the aircraft struck it.
The impact and explosion did make the accident more deadly. But German authorities find that according to regulations, the house was a proper distance from the airport. Finally, investigators consider whether the engine boosting problem was a possible cause.
Port is off the clock.
The theory is quickly dismissed.
The boost issue had nothing to do with the accident. One of the engines was actually carrying a crude form of flight recorder, which indicated that during the run, the engines were certainly delivering enough power to get the aircraft airborne.
Während des knapp zweistündigen Aufenthalts in München,
in March 1959, a year after the tragedy of Munich, the German government releases its official report. It lays full blame for the accident at the feet of Captain James Thain.
Ice. Ice on the wings, which they say was there before the accident. Simple.
The German investigation also suggests that by agreeing to switch seats,
Take us home.
Captain Thain may have created confusion over which pilot was in charge.
And they said Captain Thain, he's the one responsible for the deaths of 23 people and the decimating the Manchester United football team. That is one hell of a burden to take on.
I think in terms of the press, obviously they like to have somebody that they can pin something on, and to that extent they saw him as a little bit of a villain.
He was definitely badly treated. He was made the scapegoat.
A year after the crash, James Thain's reputation is in tatters. The former RAF officer and accomplished commercial pilot is now a full-time farmer. The disaster at Munich haunts him constantly.
I can remember Mum and Dad sitting up for all hours of the night talking about this because Dad was convinced that there had been some external force that had affected the takeoff run.
Thain is certain that ice on the wings did not cause the crash. He decides to launch his own investigation.
Dad was a man of great integrity and fortitude, and he was determined that he would make sure that he found the cause of the accident.
But in 1959, there are almost no forensic tools at his disposal.
For a start, of course, an aircraft of that size would have the benefit of a flight data recorder, a black box flight recorder, and a cockpit voice recorder. And if we could have that information from the 1958 Munich accident, there would be absolutely no doubt about the cause.
V1. The plane reached 117 knots, but then slowed dramatically. Ice on the wings can't explain that sudden loss of speed. But something else can. Something Thain sees as the real cause of the crash. Slush on the runway.
So imagine you're driving on a dry road during the winter and you suddenly enter an area of slush.
Canadian aviation expert Terry Townsend specializes in the study of runway contamination.
Immediately you're going to notice resistance on the vehicle from the slush, and the same thing happens on the aircraft.
Thain believes other planes didn't have slush problems that day because they took off on the first 2/3 of the runway. Since the Elizabethan accelerated more slowly to compensate for the boost pressure problem, it rolled further into the unused part of the runway with deep slush.
It takes more power to overcome that slush.
Thain learns that 9 years earlier, a Trans-Canada Airlines plane failed to take off on a slushy Vancouver runway.
They did some research and found that as little as 5 centimeters of slush could really adversely affect the aircraft's ability to reach takeoff speed.
The Canadian government issued a letter of warning to all airlines. Do not attempt takeoff in more than 5 centimeters of slush.
It was sent to BEA, but for some reason, best known to themselves, they did not take any action on it and filed it away for future reference.
The German investigators have dismissed slush as a possible cause, insisting it was ice on the wings. But through his research, Captain Thain uncovers a shocking omission.
We quite fortuitously came across a witness who had made an inspection of the wreckage immediately after the accident.
Karl-Heinz Seffer was among the first at the scene, climbing up on the wing to help pull co-pilot Kenneth Raymond from the wreckage. He was later interviewed by investigators.
Ich kletterte über den rechten Flügel hinunter. Mir fiel kein Eis am Rumpf oder am Flügel auf. Ich trug Gummistiefel. Da war kein Eis, sonst wäre ich ausgerutscht.
But when this report was read out to the first German Commission, only part of it was read out. That part which included the evidence that he couldn't find any ice was left out.
All this was set up, it was all stage managed, you know, if Thain was going to be made a scapegoat, it was going to be ice on the wing, it wasn't going to be runway contamination.
That's in spite of eyewitness accounts from the air traffic controllers, which also supported the slush theory.
Beeline 609, your clearance expires at 3:1. Time now is 3:0.
The most crucial eyewitnesses saw the aircraft start the takeoff run as normal. About halfway down the runway, they saw the nose lift, which would be standard procedure. But then, unusually, they saw it go back down onto the runway, which of course should not happen.
This crucial eyewitness evidence was also omitted at the inquiry.
It's quite notable that the air traffic controllers that were called as witnesses were the trainee ones, and that the qualified ones weren't called.
The only person to testify about slush on the runway was the Munich airport manager. He said he inspected the runway and found the slush was less than a centimeter deep.
Slush can be difficult to measure because it can vary significantly in height across the runway. The slush can be 1 centimeter high in one place and it can be 10 centimeters high in another. So a number of samples have to be taken in order to get a reasonable average.
Also in question is Reichel's conclusion about ice on the wings. That it must have been there before takeoff, since the only areas without ice were behind the propellers where it blew off. A scientific challenge to this view comes from a most unlikely source. Captain Thain's wife, Ruby.
She was a remarkable lady, being one of the first women to get a first-class honours degree from Bristol in chemistry, physics and maths.
A trained chemist, Ruby Thain points to the massive amount of fire-extinguishing chemicals sprayed on the burning wreckage.
Actually thought about this very carefully, and she obtained a sample of fire extinguisher powder, which turned out to be sodium bicarbonate, which is common baking powder. So she would go out and sprinkle it on the metal car thinking it might simulate an aircraft wing, and found that if that mixed with snow and water, that this solution would freeze at a lower temperature than that was recorded at Munich that night.
Firemen trained their hoses mainly on the engines. Ruby's experiment could explain why ice did not accumulate in those areas, but did build up on the rest of the wing in the hours after the crash. With new eyewitness testimony and compelling scientific evidence, another side of the story begins to emerge.
If it's ice on the wings, it's the captain's fault. He is to blame.
V1.
Of course, if it's slush on the runway, then really it's the airport to blame.
Thain submits the new evidence to the German authorities, but they refuse to reopen the investigation.
It's nonsense.
In 1961, BEA officially fires Thain, primarily for violating the company's policy against pilots switching seats.
Well, they sacked him, and he was devastated by this, for something which was effectively a little company regulation, but other people did that as well.
BEA, obviously, if you think about it, did not want a pilot like that on the flight deck. As they're about to take off, this is your captain speaking, Captain Thain, I'm the one responsible for 23 deaths at Munich in 1958, so no airline wants that.
A conviction of convenience, it didn't matter who they hung out to dry, and he was hung out to dry.
The loss of his job makes Thain more determined than ever to clear his name. He writes letter after letter to both the British and German governments, urging them to reopen the investigation. In 1965, those efforts pay off.
Ja, Schatz, ich bin fertig.
German authorities agree to review the investigation of the Munich disaster.
Initially, with the second German inquiry, it was felt that, yes, there could be a glimmer of hope.
That hope has been stirred by some new research.
Tests into slush carried out at Busby.
Britain's Royal Aircraft Establishment has conducted slush tests on the Elizabethan aircraft.
Basically, they flooded a runway to varying depths and simulated a takeoff run using an Ambassador aircraft. The results of these tests were quite alarming.
In run after run, the plane decelerates from 117 to about 105 knots. The same loss of speed reported by Thain.
We're hoping that when the Germans have considered, if they consider all the relevant evidence, we shall get them to reach the conclusion that the aircraft accident was due to slush on the runway and not ice on the wings.
But at the two-day hearing, Reichel is not swayed by the new evidence. Instead of clearing Thain, he condemns him further, saying that by switching seats, the captain actually made things worse.
The differing assessment of the situation by the two pilots probably increased the severity of the accident.
Christ, we're not going to make it!
As an investigator these days, I can see no technical reason why that should have contributed to the accident.
The damning findings of the German Review Commission are a crushing blow to Thain.
The British government knew, the airline knew, Thain certainly knew he'd been set up, but nothing was done.
But in a strange twist, he's about to get one last chance, thanks to Britain's most powerful politician.
100,000 expectant fans packed the stands to see great football. The Busby Babes were raring to go.
In 1967, Harold Wilson is Prime Minister of the UK. After attending a Manchester United game, he makes a comment that sets off a media frenzy. He says he believes James Thain was a victim of injustice.
became another headline, "The fight goes on."
Harold Wilson, he knew enough that Thain was innocent, and he really took it on. It was debated in the House of Commons, and then it went ahead, and this was the most thorough inquiry yet.
In 1968, British investigators conduct a study to determine whether slush or wing ice caused the Munich disaster. Their findings immediately call into question the accuracy of the two German reports. Photographic analysis shows that the white on the wings is not snow. It was merely light reflecting off a wet surface.
A new picture was taken from the original negative, which showed clearly that the markings on the aircraft, so there couldn't have been ice.
As well, 3 separate experts determined that the amount of ice Reichel found on the wings, 5 millimeters, would not have been enough to prevent takeoff.
I don't see how a layer of ice, even 5 millimeters thick, could account for a deceleration of the aircraft.
Then the British inquiry takes a dramatic turn when a star witness appears, Reinhard Meyer, a pilot who was first on the scene of the crash.
Ich ging hin und untersuchte den Flügel des Flugzeugwracks und bemerkte nichts in der Art von Frost oder angefrorenen Ablagerungen, nur schmelzenden Schnee.
It turned out when he was called to give evidence, he said, well, I spoke to Reichel personally, face to face, and told him what had happened, that I'd gone to the aircraft, I'd looked for ice immediately after, within minutes of the crash, and I found no ice, just melting snow only. And that was it. So everyone was astonished at this.
Reichel has no explanation for the glaring omission.
I think he found it very difficult to back down and say, actually, I was wrong.
Slush on the runway is going to be the German airport authorities' fault, and they're not going to accept that.
In March 1969,
good news,
11 years after the crash,
finally,
the British government formally clears James Thain.
Well, of course, my family are very pleased indeed.
Well, he knew that obviously this was the right findings, and he was very pleased and happy because in this country he'd been exonerated.
But BEA does not give him his job back. Captain Thain never flies again. In Germany, Hans Reichel and the aviation authorities never exonerate him.
I think there was a huge amount of stress and strain and tension, and he died a young man. He was 54.
At Munich, there were 23 victims, and Captain Thain was the 24th.
10 years after the accident that killed 8 of its players, Manchester United becomes the first English team to win the European Cup.
At last, Matt Busby, the maestro of Manchester United, had groomed a team great enough to beat Europe's best.
A cup they might have won in 1958, if not for an aviation disaster that devastated the finest team of players Britain had ever assembled. Harry Gregg continued playing for Manchester United until 1967. Now in his 70s, he dwells only on the fond memories.
I don't think about the accident. I think about what I was part of. A team of wonderful young, spirited players, great journalists, great staff. Everything was good about it.
Captain Thain's legacy is modern aviation's improved understanding of the deadly effects of slush.
The problem is tackled now, and I would suggest it was probably a direct result of the Munich accident. Airport authorities approached the problem very, very differently.
By what he did, forcing this issue, he's probably saved countless lives and prevented more than one Munich in that particular time. So in that sense, there is to be admired for what he did in those 11 years.
Mum was quoted as saying, "A man with greater integrity I will never know." But he also left an inscription for me in a book, which is the difference between the impossible and the possible is merely a measure of man's determination.
It's a rough ride aboard a 737 on descent to New Orleans.
We're getting tumbled around pretty good.
A violent thunderstorm has caught the pilots off guard.
Mayday, Mayday, Taca 110. We're in the middle of a storm.
We're talking about the equivalent of an atomic bomb going off.
Everything went black. All the alarms start sounding in the cockpit.
We lost an engine.
Both engines.
With no thrust, the plane won't get far.
I don't think I will make it. I don't have any power on the engines.
38 passengers suddenly face a terrifying prospect. They will crash in minutes.
Look! That's where we're going to go in?
You got it, my friend.
Unless the crew of Taca Flight 110 can perform one of the greatest feats in the history of commercial aviation.
All right. Mayday, Mayday.
A brand new Boeing 737 is making its way through heavy thunderstorms and hail 30,000 feet above the Gulf of Mexico.
Vamos a tener mal tiempo por un buen rato.
Taca Airlines is a small family-owned operation based in El Salvador. Taca Flight 110 left Belize City less than 2 hours ago, bound for New Orleans. Among the 38 passengers,
Gracias.
no one is more eager to arrive in the U.S. than Lee Burmeister.
I'd been down to Costa Rica for about a month, and my appendix ruptured and had surgery in a small little village. It was a scary time. I was really ready to get home.
The heavy weather the crew is now coping with is a big change from earlier in the flight.
I remember that it was a very sunny day when we left Belize. Everything was going well.
It was just like that. It was pretty, and then all of a sudden it was the blackest sky I've ever seen in the afternoon.
They're flying over the Gulf of Mexico in May. At this time of year, the weather is unpredictable. Violent storms can form in a matter of minutes.
Thunderstorms have all types of hazards in them, from the heavy rain, hail, lightning, microburst, wind shear, severe icing. We're talking about the equivalent of an atomic bomb going off. A tremendous amount of energy.
To avoid dangerous storms, the crew tracks the weather with onboard radar. But the technology has limitations.
Airborne weather radar typically operates in an X band, which is a certain wavelength and has limited power. As a matter of fact, hail is not picked up on airborne radar.
So we will sometimes get hail blowing off a storm, and yet it'll only show up as green or yellow in front of us on the weather radar, not as the heart of a red thunderstorm. And unfortunately, this is one of the reasons we have to try to stay as far away from thunderstorms as we can.
Captain Carlos Dardanau was born to fly. At just 29, he is the third generation in a family of pilots.
Anti-ice on.
Since I was a little child, I remember that I was dreaming on being a pilot and being around airplanes all the time.
Captain Dardanau has had to overcome tremendous obstacles to earn his wings. 6 years earlier, in 1982, he was flying for a small general aviation company.
I was doing a little air taxi business around the country.
El Salvador was consumed by a civil war, and Dardanau found himself caught in the crossfire.
At a little grass runway airport, I was shot by guerrillas in the face.
Badly wounded, he managed to fly his passengers to safety.
We just take off, and I stayed really low between trees, and I flew 20 minutes back to the main airport.
The brush with death cost him his left eye.
I was shot over here. The bullet went through.
But Dardanot did not give up on his dream. Despite his impaired vision, he went on to become a certified commercial pilot.
Taca 110 runway 28, final approach course, continue inbound. Descend at pilot's discretion, maintain 4,000.
Thank you, sir. Taca 110, 4,000.
First Officer Dionisio Lopez has more than 12,000 flight hours. He and Dardanot have flown together many times. Captain Arturo Soleil is a flight instructor with Taca Airlines. He's on board today to observe the performance of this new plane. A 737-300 series, the jet was delivered to Taca Airlines just 2 weeks ago.
This hail is going to scratch the paint.
We were really worried about the paint coming off the airplane because this is a brand new airplane in the company.
The 300 is the latest in the world's most successful line of twin-engine passenger jets. It's more aerodynamic than its predecessor. It also features a new state-of-the-art engine design.
When you pick up a new jetliner worth millions and millions and fly it home with a brand new paint job and everything is nice and new, it's not just a thrill for the crew, it's a thrill for the airline too, especially a smaller one like Taca. This was a big, big deal.
50 kilometers from the New Orleans airport, the plane begins its final descent.
It feels like you hit a wall. There was severe turbulence in the cockpit with a lot of noise, with ice hitting the airplane.
Por favor, permanezca sentado con el cinturón de seguridad puesto.
It was awful. Lots of lightning, and the plane was having a pretty rough trip. We were getting tumbled around pretty good.
As the flight attendants take their seats.
Flight attendants, please take your seats.
Suddenly, less than 17,000 feet from the ground, the flight becomes all the more terrifying.
It was very strange because it had never happened to me before. The lights had never gone off during turbulence.
Everything went black. All the alarms start sounding in the cockpit. All the instruments went out. So I hit the throttles a couple of times, trying to just go to basics, control the airplane.
We lost power on the engines.
Then I find out that we didn't have any power.
I've got nothing.
The plane has enough speed to glide, but not for long. It will rapidly lose altitude as it does. No power also means no electricity for all of the onboard systems. In the New Orleans control tower, Flight 110 disappears from radar.
Taca 110, approach, say altitude. Taca 110, this is New Orleans approach control. How do you hear?
Without power, communication with the plane is now impossible.
It's really quiet. There aren't any engine sounds. There aren't any lights. It feels like you're in a dark room without any power.
In less than a minute, the 737 drops almost 1,000 feet. It continues to fall.
We are dropping at 1,500 feet per minute.
And without power, there is no way to restart the engines.
Well, we knew we didn't have much time to try to find out where to land or what kind of emergency landing we're going to have, or that we're going to have the engine started again.
The altimeter and attitude indicator have backup battery power. Nothing else is working.
The DFU started.
The APU, or Auxiliary Power Unit, is a backup generator that provides emergency power to vital systems. But starting it takes time. And with each passing second, Taca Flight 110 falls closer and closer to the water below.
It was very quiet. You could hear the hail hitting the plane. I was thinking that this was it, that it's going down, and this is my last day.
Lovers, watch the gauges.
Without power to the engines, the state-of-the-art jetliner has become a 43-ton glider.
We were wondering if we can get the APU going really fast. You know, you're gliding down in the middle of the thunderstorm, trying to get the power going.
APU's up and running.
Y cuando regresaron las luces, when the lights came back on, I was relieved. I thought it was something temporary. No big deal.
The APU is now providing emergency power to the plane's systems. But the engines are still not running. To fire up the powerful turbofan engines, the crew must follow the procedure for a complete engine restart.
Fast to idle. Fuel levers off.
The APU can generate the power to restart the engines, but it takes time.
It takes like 30 seconds or so, but it feels like your life.
Got a Mayday to New Orleans. Get us out of this storm and onto our runway.
Mayday, Mayday, Taca 110. We are in the middle of the storm, sir. We need vectors to the runway now, sir. We lost an engine.
Both engines.
Both engines, sir. Both engines.
Understand both engines, Taca 110, roger.
The controller knows he needs to get the plane on the ground as soon as possible, even if it means sending it to another airport.
Taca 110, roger. Turn left heading 280. Vectors to Navy calendar runway 22.
Flight 110 is still 32 kilometers from New Orleans. The stricken plane has a better chance of landing at a US naval base 27 kilometers away. But the plane will not make it to any airport unless the crew gets the engine started.
29, 30, hit it.
Only 5,000 feet from the ground, the left engine ignites.
Speed.
Okay, good job. Start working on the other one.
The plane can fly with only one engine, but both engines would be safer, especially in bad weather.
Request a vector back to New Orleans.
Okay, we have one engine back on. Request vectors to New Orleans.
Taca 110, Wilco, fly heading 290. Vector around the thunderstorms to your right.
Meanwhile, Captain Soleil is taking the steps to fire up the second engine.
Here comes the other one. And here comes the other one.
Speed.
All right.
And you got both of them.
With both engines back, it appears the crisis is over.
Okay, sir, we have both engines back now. We really appreciate what you've done for us. We are going to go down to 310.
For the engines to come back on, it really didn't make anybody feel that much better. We are still in a mess.
Look, I don't feel any power. Why don't I feel any power?
Something's wrong. The engines appear to be running, but they're not providing any thrust.
Sucker's not started.
Then the gauges show that the engines are overheating. They're burning up from the inside. The risk of a catastrophic engine fire now leaves Dardanot no choice. He must do something no pilot would ever want to do. Shut down both engines for good. Once again, the plane is without power, and falling fast.
We knew that we don't have any possibility to restart the engines, and then we had to start looking for some place to land.
The plane is quickly closing in on 3,000 feet. At the rate it's dropping, it won't make it to New Orleans.
Okay, where do I put this thing down?
Visibility begins to improve when the plane breaks through the storm clouds. But it's still raining, and Dardanelle has less than 3 minutes to find a place to land.
I was seeing just swampy land all over the place.
New Orleans is surrounded by canals and lakes. The city is protected by a system of levees, man-made barriers designed to prevent flooding. It's no place to try to land a 737.
We don't have power on the engines.
Taca 110, I'm gonna vector you to Lakefront Airport. You're only 11 miles from Lakefront.
I don't think I will make it. I don't have any power in the engines. I guess we'll have to go down. We're going to declare an emergency. We're gonna have to decide where to put this thing.
Taca 110, do you have visual reference to the ground at this time?
Yes, sir.
Taca 110, there is an interstate highway directly ahead of you at 12 o'clock and 7 miles.
Let's see where it is.
Landing on a highway may be Dardanelle's only option.
It was probably a possibility, but you always know that the freeways are full of cars. I said, no way I'm going to try to land in the highway because we'll kill many more people, so that was not our option, really.
11 years earlier, a Southern Airways flight facing a similar emergency was forced to land on a highway in Georgia. The crash landing killed 9 people on the ground and 63 people on board the plane.
I don't think we're going to be able to make it there.
You're 6 miles away from Lakefront Airport. Can you make it there?
No, sir, we're at 2,000 feet and losing altitude.
The crew only has one option left.
I guess I'm gonna have to make a ditching here, sir.
They must take their chances and put the plane down on the water.
Taca 110, roger. Whatever you need to do, sir.
And that was about the last communication with the tower. Then we were like 1,500 feet when that was going on.
This is New Orleans Tower. We have an inbound 737 probable ditching. 45 souls on board.
The Coast Guard is immediately deployed. Dardanelle plans to put the plane down in the canal directly ahead of him.
Okay. There.
Put it down softly.
It was kind of the feeling of everyone on the plane that we weren't going to get out of this. It was a doomsday kind of feeling. And this was it.
Excuse me, what's going on?
Lo siento, pero no tengo más información en este momento.
The stewardess's body language, I didn't even have to understand what they were saying. You could just see them in distress.
The 737 can only stay in the air for another minute. As Dardanelle looks for a safe stretch of canal to drop the plane in, another option appears.
Look at that one over there.
And then Lopez saw the levee parallel to the canal that we were making the approach on.
Should we put it down on the grass?
Yes, boss.
The levee is much shorter and narrower than a runway, but it looks safer than the water.
That's where we're going to go in?
You got it, my friend.
They will have to act fast to get there.
Prepare the cabin.
You don't even have time to think about being scared. So I can't say I was scared. We had to start preparing the cabin.
Empezar a trabajar en la cabina.
La cabeza entre las rodillas y agarren los tobillos.
I had to assume crash position, and it was really difficult for me because I had just had surgery.
You're kidding me.
And I had stitches going up the middle of my stomach.
Stitches. Operation.
Passengers only have seconds to prepare.
Los pasajeros se tenían que quitar los zapatos, se tenían que...
The passengers had to take off their shoes, their jewelry. They had to put their shoes under the seat in front of them. So we went through the whole emergency checklist.
Teníamos que trabajar.
Air traffic control can no longer pick up the low-flying 737 on radar. The controller asks other planes to look for it.
6 to Kilo Alpha. If you could check your east just slightly to the south, 3 to 4 miles, we lost an aircraft down there, 737. If you could let me know what you see.
Roger. Kilo Alpha to 6. I'll see what I can do.
I felt scared when I got back to my seat. That's the moment when I really got scared.
Okay, put the gear down. All right.
But Captain Dardanot is still flying towards the water.
Well, the levee was parallel to my right.
To have any hope of landing on the levee, he needs to make a sudden and dramatic course correction. That requires a risky maneuver known as a side slip.
So we just had to do a little bit side slip to get into position to make a perfect landing.
It's a move meant for small planes and gliders, not a 43-ton Boeing 737. But it's a risk he has to take.
Agarrate, papá.
I prayed. I was in disbelief that this was happening.
Only 700 feet separate the plane from the ground. Without engines, the pilots have no thrust reversers to slow the plane when it touches down. Dardanot has an additional challenge. With only one eye, he's unable to gauge depth as he speeds towards the narrow, rain-soaked strip of grass.
Oh, God. Oh, God. I was prepared for the plane to blow up and explode. I was prepared for a tragic event and mentally had said goodbye to my family.
This is it.
There's a high cement wall in front of the levee and a steep embankment on the left. There may not be enough room to land.
Watch out for the wing on that side.
I see it. Come on. Aquí te tengo, baby. Aquí te tengo.
We touched down with one wheel and the other one.
Was it a hard landing? Yes. If the seatbelt snapped, we would have flown through the plane, for sure.
On the soggy grass, the plane is in danger of skidding off the levee into the water.
I was trying just to control the airplane, not to hit the brakes and not to lose the airplane at the last minute, you know. The spoilers were out. So we were just thinking, okay, we make it, we make it, we make it.
Very good. Very good. Very good, Charlie. Very good, my friend.
It was surprise.
It was a hard landing, but it was a nice landing. Just to be alive.
El aterrizaje fue espectacular. El avión... The landing was spectacular. The plane landed so smoothly. There wasn't even a bit of turbulence.
No hubo ninguna ni media turbulencia.
A perfect landing.
Perfecto. And that was, I think, the most beautiful landing that I ever made.
When I looked out my window, there was no fire. So I immediately opened the door and deployed the slide.
Salió el tobogán.
Rápido, por la salida más cercana.
They told us to get off the plane, that the plane was going to blow up.
The New Orleans controller has no idea what has become of Taca Flight 110. Another aircraft relays the news to the tower.
Kilo Alpha to 6. Everything looks okay. Looks like you did a pretty good job.
They made it. You're not going to believe where they are.
For the first time in history, A 737 without any engines has landed safely outside of an airport. Now investigators must find out why the sophisticated engines on a brand new jetliner failed in mid-flight. Pilots call this a dead stick landing, a landing with no engines. As it turns out, Taca 110 has landed on NASA property. This is the Michoud facility, where they manufacture parts for the space shuttle.
The evacuation was quick. We got out of the plane quickly. We slid down the chutes. I got to the top of the levee, and there were some nurses that were on the plane. And they looked at my stitches and everything.
No major injuries, just one person that had an operation, but she's okay. Where were you headed? To New Orleans.
And soon after, an ambulance came, put me on a stretcher, and took me to the hospital.
We have to thank God. That's right. Yes. And also our captain, because he kept the calm. I'm going to talk to the
Now that's not something you see every day.
Within hours of the emergency, investigators arrive and begin examining the damaged plane.
To end up with a jetliner sitting on a levee, having landed there, being perfectly intact, is almost an unbelievable sight. It's beyond incredible.
There's a couple of questions for you, but first thing I'd like to say is, nice landing. So, tell me, when did the engine trouble start?
Investigators meet with the crew right away. They want to know exactly what was happening when the engines flamed out.
We were descending through 16.5 when both our engines flamed out at the same time.
That both of them coming apart at the same time is an infinitesimal possibility.
This plane was powered by one of the most advanced and widely used jet engines on Earth, the CFM56. It powers not only the Boeing 737, but Airbus and military planes as well.
The CFM56 is just a marvel of current engineering aeronautically. There are thousands and thousands of them out there, and they almost never, ever fail.
But 2 CFM56s had failed on this one plane alone. Investigators desperately need to know why.
I haven't flown through too many storms that intense.
They turn their attention to the weather conditions.
It's considered a very rare occurrence for engines to have flamed out in flight. And therefore, the concentration was on what possibility would cause this. Is there an environmental effect, since they were flying through rain and hail?
Tell me about the storm.
The winds were fierce. There was so much rain and hail, we could barely see out the window.
Dents in the fuselage revealed that the plane was struck by hail almost an inch in diameter. If the hail was strong enough to damage the exterior of the plane, investigators wonder if it crippled the engines as well. A turbofan engine is made up of a system of fans and blades. A large fan brings air into the engine. A series of blades compresses the incoming air, which mixes with fuel to ignite, spinning the turbines deep inside the engine.
The first thing you look for is to find the parts and then look in the front and the back of the engine to determine if there's damage that might explain something has gone in the engine or something has broken inside the engine.
To peer inside the engine, they use a borescope.
This is where you put the little TV camera on the end of a scope of some sort. You can look in the internal hot section of the engine and see what they could see.
No hail damage to the compressor that I can see. Keep going deeper. Let's see what's at the center.
But the turbines deep inside the engine are charred.
Look at this. Turbines are almost completely melted.
When the engine overheats, if the overheat is allowed to occur long enough, then it will cause melting of the turbine blades.
So when did you get the temperature warning?
The engines started to overheat right after we started them.
And the damage to the turbine, which is the melting of the blades, means that you can no longer produce thrust out of that engine.
The charred turbines do not explain why the engine stopped working in the first place. For some reason, Flight 110's engines had quit, restarted, and only then burned up. But before the search for answers can continue, investigators are confronted with another problem. The plane is starting to sink.
It can't stay here much longer. Maybe NASA has some ideas.
The Levee was never meant to support 43,000 kilograms.
A jetliner has an awful lot of weight on a very small footprint. You leave a plane there for 2 or 3 days, you may have it mired up to its hubcaps.
There was barely enough room to land the plane on the Levee. Getting the plane off of it could be even more challenging.
You've got really 3 ways to get this airplane out of there. One is to fly it out, secondly, to disassemble it, or third, put it on a barge. But it's not as easy as it sounds.
Disassembling the plane could cause more damage.
Do you think we can fly it off?
The decision is made. They'll attempt to take off and fly the plane to New Orleans.
The very first problem in getting the airplane ready to fly was getting the engines to the point of reliability, which meant they had to replace the right engine. It was just cooked. It was too far gone. Left engine was probably going to need to be overhauled, but they could fly it out with that.
After replacing the right engine, they bring in test pilots to get the plane off the ground and to the airport 24 kilometers away in New Orleans.
It's a good, safe operation that we're doing here today. We can accelerate up to virtually to takeoff speed, and then if we decided to stop, why, we could stop the airplane.
With no passengers and very little fuel to weigh the plane down, it reaches takeoff speed in just 365 meters. The investigation at the emergency landing site comes to a dramatic end.
In most scenarios in which an airplane comes down in the wrong place but is still intact, you probably never get it out that way. This just happened to be amazing luck.
Hey, guys.
Investigators must now try to figure out why the engines failed in mid-flight. If rain caused them to shut down, thousands of other planes are at risk.
This was an incredible situation because these engines are just too reliable. Did they go through a thunderstorm? Well, that's not supposed to do it, so what happened?
The CFM56 engines are designed to withstand a heavy rainstorm. Most water is diverted away from the core while in flight. Whatever makes it inside should evaporate or drain from the engine.
The engines were sent back to the GE test facility in Ohio, where they have the test facilities that can recreate water ingestion testing.
If some hidden design flaw caused the engines to fail, investigators need to find it. They hope water ingestion testing can provide some answers.
Once they got these engines in the shop and started testing them, the very first thing was to go to the FAA standard, the way FAA had tested them in the past and what had been approved.
Okay, let's see what they can handle.
You basically spray water from nozzles into the inlet of the engine. And the amount of water you adjust in percentage to the amount of air to simulate flight conditions.
Despite rigorous water testing, the engine does not flame out.
Like we thought, wasn't the rain.
Nothing went wrong. The engine continued to run. So obviously something else had happened.
So they needed to examine this in much more detail. Was there something more severe about the weather?
We lost an engine.
Both engines.
Both engines, sir.
Investigators study all available data on the storm that somehow brought down Taca Flight 110.
That was more than a thunderstorm, it was a hailstorm.
In the case of the Taca, we had basically a frontal system to the north, some very strong winds in the vertical producing several hail events. And in the southern latitudes, you don't typically see too many hailstorms. So it was abnormal.
The engines are designed to ingest water, but investigators are unsure if hail acts differently from water inside the engine.
They never thought about hail getting into the core.
Hail is only created in a thunderstorm. It basically starts as a raindrop. It goes up above the freezing level, freezes, becomes a piece of ice. Then as it gets heavier, drops back down below the freezing level, coats another layer of water around it, and gets back into the updraft again, brought to higher altitudes, and refreezes. So hail is multiple layers of ice that forms on a particle.
Investigators learned that the engines were designed to withstand the impact from hailstones of a certain size.
The FAA standards called for a mixture of hail sizes of 1-inch and 2-inch diameter balls.
Some of the hail Taca 110 encountered was smaller than that. Those smaller pieces of hail could make their way through the fan and compressor blades, accumulating deep inside the engine, where they would melt.
Hail was considered to not be a factor in the center core, but if it had been, what would it look like?
Investigators calculate the amount of hail that could have entered the engine core. They then estimate the volume of water the melting ice would have produced.
That's substantially more water.
Investigators want to know if this excess water overwhelmed the engines and caused the failure.
Okay, let's try more water and see what happens.
They perform another water ingestion test, this time adding even more water to account for the hail inside the engines.
So if they used enough water to emulate that, maybe they could make it fail. Well, they tried using a high speed on the engine, and still it wouldn't fail.
Okay, what are we missing?
Or whether there's something unique about the engine operation itself that might have contributed to the engine losing power.
Engine performance figures from the flight data recorder give investigators a new lead.
Just before the flame-out, engine power was down to 35%.
Taca 110 runway 28, final approach course, continue inbound, descend at pilot's discretion, maintain 4,000.
Thank you, sir. Taca 410, 4,000.
They had just started their descent.
Thank you, sir. Taca 110, 4,000.
As the plane began its final approach to New Orleans, the engines automatically reduced power to slow down for their descent. At a lower power setting, the engines may not have been able to handle as much water.
We've been testing everything in accordance with the normal FAA methodologies at high speed on the engines, but these guys were in descent to New Orleans.
They repeat the test, this time with less power to the engines.
So we want to see what happens when we add the same amount of water, but with the engines powered down to 35%, okay?
The big aha moment was when they realized that it was the speed of the engine that was managing to get the engine through the ingestion of as much water as they could throw at it, and presumably as much hail. But when the engine went down to idle, that's when they managed to find the key. That's when the engine couldn't handle it.
Well, now we know what happened. Bad timing.
And that test gave a completely different result.
Investigators have discovered why the engines flamed out.
It showed something that no one understood at the time, because in all the testing and all the logic that had gone into it, they hadn't taken into account the slow speeds on the engine on descent.
At the lower speeds, the hail, having a significant velocity and momentum, can actually see an opening between the fan blades. And it's able to get through the fan blades and directly into the core.
The engines filled with hail and water and flamed out. For investigators, only one mystery remains.
Look, don't feel any power.
What went wrong after the Taca crew restarted their engines?
The sucker's not started.
Why did they overheat and fail? When the engines on the 737 flamed out, the crew knew they had to act fast.
We've lost power on the engines.
To have any hope of restoring engine power, they first needed to get the APU running.
Get the APU started.
Since the engines were no longer spinning, they had stopped ingesting air and water, but a successful restart was far from guaranteed.
If you do not have all the proper conditions, you can get what's called a hot start, which means that you have too much fuel for the amount of air going into it, and the flame will now migrate into the turbine, where it could overheat it.
After studying the engine data from the flight recorder, investigators conclude that the overheating and ultimate failure of the engines was in fact due to a hot start.
Mayday, Mayday, Taca 110. We lost an engine.
Both engines.
Both engines, sir. Both engines.
With his engines flooded with fuel and no time to properly drain them, Dardanel hit the ignition switch.
If they didn't get all the timing correctly, then this is what's going to happen. You're going to get a hot start. I can't be critical of a pilot in that condition. That aircraft is coming down.
Rain and hail from an intense storm crippled a modern passenger jet and nearly led to disaster. Investigators must find a way to make sure it never happens again.
One of the beauties of aviation and aviation safety is when we find there's a problem, everybody works together to solve it. And in this case, the problem indicated a need for an engine change, not a complete design overhaul, but just a few tweaks. But that was done almost immediately, much to the credit of everybody involved.
The shape of the engine nose cone and the spacing of the fan blades are modified in order to better deflect hail away from the core. Also, additional bleed doors are added to drain more water from the engine.
That sort of thing hasn't happened again, and there are thousands and thousands of these engines flying every day for hours and hours and hours.
Within a year of the incident, 737-300s around the world are retrofitted with the upgrades. The plane involved in the daring landing is back in service within a month.
Look at that one over there. That's where we're going to go in.
You got it, my friend.
The crew's actions on Flight 110 are legendary in the aviation world.
The decision-making at the very end, when they were going to put it in the canal and saw an opportunity to put it on dry ground and did so, that was superlative. It was the decision-making.
Investigators credit the calm nerves and determination of Captain Dardanel.
Watch out for the wing on that side.
I see it.
For avoiding what could have been a fatal disaster. Captain Carlos Dardanel is dubbed a hero in the media.
Passengers that day were overjoyed. Dardanel and his crew kept the calm, and because of that, 45 people who rode that plane are alive today.
Today, the Dardanel family tradition continues. Carlos's son and daughter have followed in their father's footsteps, both becoming pilots.
At the beginning, I was mad when I was shot. I lost part of my vision, and then I had this accident that everything went well. And 20 years later, I have a career, I have a good life, and life is for a reason is for life.